E ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā matawaka, e ngā karangatanga, e maha, tēnā koutou katoa. E ngā monga, e ngā awa, e ngā moana, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Anne O'Brien, tuku ingoa, ko au te kaurungi o Waituhi o Tāmaki, no mai, haere mai. Greetings. Thank you for checking out the Auckland Writers Festival Waituhi or Tāmaki program for 2022. I'm Anne O'Brien, I'm the festival director, and I'm just going to take a little bit of time to introduce you to some highlights of what is a really rich program. We've moved from May to August this year for COVID reasons as a one-off, and that's allowed us to just expand the program a little bit with a little bit more international content alongside the rich layers of New Zealand content that we already had programmed and some digital content. This is a festival of more than 170 events, more than 200 writer participants, and it's in a combination of free and ticketed sessions at accessible price points. So make sure that you find your pathway in. There are plenty of ways to be part of this festival. I'm going to start by talking about some of the special performance events that we have programmed for you this year. And the first of those begins our festival week on August the 22nd and the 23rd. It is a performance by the Sydney Art Quartet called Art and Power. They fly across the Tasman to join us on stage in the concert chamber, and they're joined by New Zealand actor Kip Chapman in a call and response piece that combines readings from Unequal Music, Music in Silence and the Kreutzer Sonata with music from Bach, Haydn, Charpentier and Janacek. It's a meditation on the power of music and the power of language, 2 performances only, not to be missed. On Tuesday in the Aotea Centre, we will celebrate the great father of musical theatre in the 20th century, Stephen Sondheim, who of course died late last year. We bring together singers including Jennifer Ward-Leland, Hayden T, Kristen Dara and Cole Johnston, James Doy on the piano, Gregory Camp in the chair, and even some tributes from further afield with James Lapine, the great Broadway writer, giving us his thoughts on the genius of Sondheim. We have 3 theatre pieces this year in the Herald Theatre. Each of them have 5 performances across the week. The first of these is Hello Darkness. Based on the book by Peter Wells, co-founder of the Auckland Writers Festival. It's a meditation on life and death. The script is written by Victor Roger, it's acted by Roy Ward, and it's directed by one of New Zealand's finest contemporary theatre directors, Shane Bosher. Next up, Gasu, written by the poet, writer and performer Linda Chanwai Earl. It's a piece that was first performed in 1996 and has been revived. It looks at 100 years in the life of a Chinese family between China and New Zealand. And Linda presents this work with musician Nico Winera alongside her on stage. The third piece is called Paragon Dreams. It's devised by the multimedia artist, poet and performer Hester Uliart, who hails from the north of England but now lives in Littleton. It's a contemporary noir piece exploring the mystery as to where Michaela Midnight disappeared to 15 years ago, the hunt led by her daughter Hannah. On Saturday night, we bring together rising stars of hip-hop and spoken word to speak truth to power. Performers include Diggy Dupe, Poetic, Spike and Eric Soakai, emceed by Melania Nai, a member of the Polynesian Panthers and the author of the book on the Polynesian Panthers, The Radical Legacy. It is a new generation of Pacifica stars taking their inheritance, their legacy from the Polynesian Panthers of the 70s. And also on Saturday night, in a special event, a mashup of comedy, of music, and of language nerdery, Helen Zaltzman and Martin Oswick are the Illusionist podcast. This year, they bring us their new live show. It's about eponyms. It's called Your Name Here, and you won't want to miss it. We have 4 international guests travelling in now the borders are open, and we're particularly excited about. The first of these is a return to the Auckland Writers Festival stage by Masha Gessen, the Russian journalist who now lives in New York and writes for The New Yorker, the author of a number of books, including a book about Putin, books on autocracy and totalitarianism. Masha has just travelled to the Ukraine and is now in Georgia and will be on the stage in conversation with Jack Tame to talk about current times. The great British philosopher and speaker A.C. Grayling comes back to the Auckland Writers Festival stage with his new book, For the Good of the World, in which he asks how we might put our differences aside to rise to the challenges of the age. That is on Wednesday, early evening, and that's followed in a double bill by the fiery feminist Clementine Ford from Australia, the author of books including Fight Like a Girl and Boys Will Be Boys, an eloquent voice against toxic masculinity, and for women. Her new book, How We Love, has just come out, and she'll be in conversation about that. And on Friday night, after waiting for 2 years, we finally bring to the stage the New York Times bestseller, Leanne Moriarty, the author of 10 new best-selling books, including Big Little Lies, which of course was made into a Netflix series with Nicole Kidman, amongst others. We do have a small amount of digital content for those writers who were unable to travel because of the current situation, and I just want to reflect on those briefly. The first of those is the star of TV shows including The X-Files and Californication, also a Speedo-clad cameo in the Cheer Netflix series The Cheer last year. That of course is David Duchovny. David Duchovny has a Master's in Literature from Princeton. He did a thesis on Beckett and is the author of 4 novels including Truly Like Lightning. He'll be speaking via live stream with Sonia Wilson, the New Zealand journalist. The second of those is Rebecca Songit, the American environmentalist, essayist, thinker, walker. Her latest book, Orwell's Roses, takes as its starting point a visit she made to George Orwell's garden and starts on a path of reflection about matters political. And the third digital in hour is the Nobel Prize winner for literature for 2021, Abdul Gurna. Born in Zanzibar, he arrived in Britain as a refugee in the 1960s. He's written a glorious body of fiction work which really explores the gulf between cultures and continents, and he'll be speaking with Michelle Langston. We also have some digital content in our salons and our workshops. I won't go through all of those, but just a couple of tasters in the salons. Damon Galgut, the winner of the 2021 Booker Prize for his book based in South Africa. Delia Ephron, the sister of Nora, the co-author of You've Got Mail and the author of a memoir called Left on 10th. And the much loved UK poet, children's laureate and writer Michael Rosen with his memoir, Many Different Kinds of Love, which reflects on his time with COVID and in a coma in the care of the NHS. In the beautiful range of New Zealand content we have some wonderful pairings this year, and I just want to talk about a few of those with you. Starting with Lloyd Jones, winner of the Commonwealth Writers' Prize, and paired with Whiti Hiriaka, who this year took away the Acorn Prize for Fiction at the Ockham New Zealand Book Awards. They speak about fable and myth and the reasons why they've chosen these ancient storytelling forms to inform their latest work. The former Chief Justice of New Zealand, Shine Elias, and her son, Ned Fletcher, take the stage. Both have books. They're in a session called Law Matters, chaired by Justice Kit Toogood, in which they reflect on why the law matters and why it should not be left in the hands of lawyers. The Honourable Chris Finnison and Tāmaki Solomon will come together to talk about the relationship between Māori and the Crown and treaty settlements. Two of New Zealand's finest fiction writers, Elizabeth Smither and Owen Marshall, speak about their latest short story collections. The winner of the Ockham New Zealand General Non-Fiction Prize this year, the historian Vincent O'Malley, is joined on stage by his partner in life and in work, Dr. Joanna Kidman, to speak about their work in the areas of New Zealand history and identity, youth justice and Māori. Coco Solid and Lana Lepesi both have extraordinary books out, How to Loiter in a Turf War and Bloody Woman. They'll be speaking with each other about that and much more besides. Elizabeth Knox and Lee Murray come together to talk about speculative fiction and why military think tanks always put speculative writers on their bodies as they consider the future, because if you think it, you can create it. And in a very special session, particularly in the light of Roe versus Wade, 82-year-old Margaret Sparrow comes to the stage with Catherine Robertson, one of the true champions of reproductive rights for women in New Zealand. Her life has been one of service and commitment, and she will discuss that with Catherine. We'll talk about the world around us. Jack Thatcher is a celestial navigator based in Tauranga, recently back actually from the Cook Islands. He will take us on a celestial navigation journey. Annette Lees is joined by Rewi Spraggan and Ricky Bennett in a journey through the nighttime, from dusk to the dawn chorus, with readings, a soundscape and tangaporo, reflecting on Annette's book, After Dark. Joanna Groshevitz gives a talk on the great Ernest Shackleton in his centenary year. And 3 writers who have spent their time in the wilds come together to talk about their adventures. Chris Long is the boy from Gorge River, grew up 2 days walk from the closest town. Jo Morgan has motorbiked across Asia. She's climbed 22 of the world's 24 largest peaks. And she also raised her family for a number of years on a bus. And they're joined by Hazel Phillips, who recently has spent a lot of time walking through the back country of New Zealand and staying in tramping huts. We celebrate and think about Auckland. Lucy McIntosh gives the Michael King lecture on our identity as New Zealanders, starting with our geography, from the ground, from our feet upwards. And Nigel Borrell speaks about contemporary Māori art. His companion book comes after the remarkable exhibition Toi Tū Toi Ora at the Auckland Art Gallery last year. Memoir has been a very big subject in the book world this year, and I just want to mention 3 books there. Noelle McCarthy brings us her memoir Grand, a meditation on her relationship to herself, her mother, to Ireland and to alcohol. Abbas Nazari arrived in New Zealand as a refugee off the Tampa. He has gone on to get a Master in Strategic Studies, and he comes to the stage to talk about his work. And Muhammad Hassan, Egyptian New Zealander, once a spoken word poetry champion, now a journalist working in London, comes back to speak about his essay collection, How to Be a Bad Muslim. No festival would be in its right mind if it didn't include poetry and fiction in its lineup. We have some beautiful content there. In the poetry, in particular on National Poetry Day, we bring together 3 generations of New Zealand poets. Kevin Ireland, Anne Kennedy, and the rising star of New Zealand poetry, Ta'i Tibble, read and talk about their work and reflect on the influences that they share and the influences that differ over time. And in the fiction space, just a wealth of work. Gigi Fenster and Kirsten McDougall talk about their novels, A Good Winter and She's a Killer. Both have the most remarkable character voices I've read in quite some time. Sue Orr, Rosetta Allen and Bridget van der Zype talk about their novels. Brian Wolpert and Angelique Kasmara talk about time travel with Michelle Dickinson, and Lizzie Harwood and Douglas Lloyd Jenkins reflect on Auckland as character as backdrop to their novels. We're also a festival that's known for discussing some of the issues of the day, and there will be those too. University of Auckland Forum this year, we will talk about wealth and equity, taking as our starting point the book Too Much Money, written by Max Rashbrook, in which he argues too much of our wealth is anchored in the hands of a few. Disagreeing with him is Neville Gibson, who reviewed the book for the MER and was critical and garnered a lot of response from readers. We've added Hinemoa Elder, the Māori psychiatrist and the author of Araha, into the mix, and Tova O'Brien will referee. We also want to talk about misinformation and disinformation, and we have 3 writers to explore this topic. The first of these is Jess Berenson-Shaw. She's a researcher from Wellington and the author of a book called A Matter of Fact. The second is Stephen Davis. He's a journalist from Otago. He wrote a book called Truth and Lies several years ago. He is also the author of a book which we'll talk about in a separate section. It's called Operation Trojan Horse. It's about the holding hostage of 400 civilians on a plane in Kuwait flying from Britain across the world, and he will discuss that in a separate session. And the third is the Australian defence specialist David Kilcullen. David Kilcullen was in the army. He served in both the Australian as an Australian strategic advisor and also in the States, including to Condoleezza Rice. He teaches at both the University of Arizona and in Canberra, and he comes to us with a number of books on subjects including Afghanistan, the war between East and West, and more besides, and he'll be talking about that in a separate session as well. Also having served in the army is Harold Hillman. Harold Hillman was born in the projects of Washington, D.C. His father was born 35 years after the end of slavery. Harold Hillman went on to do a degree in psychology at the university and joined the army. He married, he had 2 children, but he had a secret of his own, and that secret was that he was gay. He eventually left the army. He joined Clinton's task force to undo the ban on homosexuals, and he now lives here in New Zealand, where he works as a leadership and executive coach and consultant. He's the author of a number of books, including the latest, Empathy, and he'll be talking about leadership and authenticity in the 21st century. On Saturday night, we welcome to the stage one of New Zealand's true cultural icons, Dame Jane Campion, who comes to us fresh off the back of the success of The Power of the Dog, but with a career that spans decades in which she has done remarkable work. She'll be in conversation with Noelle McCarthy at 6:30. And we will finish the festival, as we always do, with a free session in which we honour one of this country's most significant contributors to the literary landscape. This year, that honour goes to the great Tessa Duda, who has done much for writing and for reading and for books in this country. Her body of work includes, probably most famously, the Art Quartet, a seminal work that has influenced generations of young New Zealand readers. As you can see, there is a wealth of material here, and I've only touched on the surface of a vast array of work that you can explore. As I said at the beginning, some of it is free. You simply come, be part of the community and queue. Some of it is ticketed, all of it accessible. We really want to see you joining us here 22nd to the 28th of August, the Aotea Centre and the Auckland Town Hall, for what is not only one of Auckland's great festivals, but really a cultural taonga of this country. Please join us. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.